go around a room full of officers. My dad was West Point 1945 graduate.
Wow.
I grew up in a military family, and we moved around quite a bit. I was spit shining shoes as a 6-year-old, and so I knew what military discipline was like. The reason I chose the Air Force when '69 came along and the draft was heavy and the war was pretty bad. One of my neighbors talked me into following his footsteps, and I volunteered and enlisted in the Air Force. And at that time, after I got out, I was offered a chance to go to the to get a commission with the Air Force when I graduated, and I flunked the physical, so I decided that was probably a good sign. In any case, after about 15 years in engineering, I got faced with a choice of either moving out of state to follow my career, or take over what I helped my son start as a bicycle shop, and I took over the bicycle shop and started working that. I got through the contacts that I had made with the United Cerebral Palsy. When I started custom building three-wheelers, they introduced me to people with the state, and I worked in the state wheelchair shop for several years. And after that, eventually I retired, and by that time I was already doing what I'm doing 7 days a week in my spare time. And so I just, when I retired, it was about that time that the BVA came to me and tried to ask me to join. And at first I didn't feel comfortable because like most people, I saw the Vietnam vets as people that had been in Vietnam, and I didn't realize the difference. And so because the Vietnam vets are open to anyone that was in the service during that time, they kind of twisted my arm, and I joined and took over the program. And since then, a lot of the guys that were in the unit would come out with me, and every week we would go to United Cerebral Palsy and help pick up donations, fix equipment. We kind of worked in conjunction with them and other ministries, and still do, in such that we would always help them out if we had time to help them, and if we ever needed anything for a veteran, all we had to do was ask. And the same is true today. I get calls every day of people offering equipment, as well as people needing equipment, and so we get flooded with offers of donations, and so many times what we get is surplus to our needs for the veterans that we serve. And so when it's surplus to our needs, then we share the blessings with the other ministries and nonprofits. And at the same time, since we've worked with them hand in hand for so many years, anything that we don't have on hand that we need for a veteran, all we have to do is go get it. We just ask. And so it's a good cooperative. It keeps me busy 7 days a week, and at the same time, about that time, about 15 years ago, I fell into a contract working for a company that it's a middleman that offers the service to airlines, where they when they have damages, they get with the baggage office and file a claim, and the airlines will call this company, and the company will contact whoever they've got on tap to do the repairs. And I've managed to do a good enough job in Nashville that I usually get the first call. And, because of my back, I tell people what I'm doing. Even what I'm doing 7 days a week, I'm simply using the skills and the habits that I picked up in the Air Force in the 70s. And when we were carrying a toolbox around places like mountain sites in Korea, if you didn't have all the tools and the parts you needed, you didn't go to the Ace Hardware store. So we learned to be self-sufficient, and I learned to do a lot of mobile service and do things, take everything with me that I need and take care of what needs to be done. And it's stayed with me. And now that this last 12, 13 years, I see mostly veterans, and most of the guys, I tell people 99% of the people I see are in way worse shape than I am, and so it does a lot for me. And the guys that go with me, they get infected too. We've had several World War II veterans that we've been able to help, and I can tell you, 9 times out of 10, the veteran doesn't come to us and ask for help. It's the daughter or the son or the spouse, and so we've by way of relatives finding out what we do over the years and networking, we've had requests and been able to fill requests from 10 different states so far. And a good example, a gentleman that I had worked with in Nashville, his dad's a Vietnam veteran in Detroit. He just happened to ask one day, tell me his dad was struggling and could we help him out, and he was willing to take it to him, and this is what's happened every time. If they're willing to take it to him, it doesn't cost us anything to hand it over and verify that it's a veteran, and they can take it to him. And he took him a power chair and a lift chair, and
wow.
we found out years ago, accidentally or coincidentally, we found out that the VA doesn't like to handle lift chairs. They don't provide any assistance. So, and at the same time, the majority of the people that we see are older veterans and handicapped, and the lift chair becomes almost a necessity in many cases. We've had like last month we built a wheelchair ramp for a 100-year-old. He was a veteran in building runways in the war with Japan. He was out on the islands, and we talked to him about that. He was a heavy-duty machine operator, and he was helping to build runways. And he couldn't remember the names of the islands. But he has some pretty interesting stories, and he's 100 years old this year, and he didn't go down until he was about 98, I guess, from what I heard. And so I see a lot of these guys that they've been self-sufficient. They've had a decent career. They've many of them that I see don't even use the VA or haven't used the VA. But when that accident or that illness takes them down, they're lost. And it happens to a lot of people, not just veterans, but they're not prepared for it. And so when they go down there, it's a whole new world for them, trying to figure out, do I need a wheelchair? Do I, am I going to have to change to a hospital bed? And so we over the years, what I've done, or what I did on my own, I became certified as a rehab technician when I was working for the state, and I felt that it was kind of important, and that and my background helps me. It helps me see what they need when they go down, and I've learned a lot about different types of illnesses, ALS, MS, and so on, and it helps me to be able to perceive what's needed more so than a lot of the people that I serve. There's a lot of different types of adaptive equipment that the person that's never had a disability, when they suddenly go down, they have to learn all that. They have to learn about access and accessibility, and so we help steer them in the right direction. We get a lot of veterans that that haven't used the VA, and I've had to spend time. Well, actually, I spend more than half of my time educating the families and the veterans and teaching them about what they need. And I've had veterans like here in Murfreesboro and surrounding counties that they couldn't even tell you what their discharge paperwork was. They don't know where to find it. don't know how to find it. And during COVID, it was a real battle. Some of these guys struggled for some time during COVID because it was hard to get to resources and get access to information. So we help them do a lot more than just, it's a lot more than just handing out equipment. We had a Vietnam veteran this week that we heard about in the DAV meeting, and his house caught on fire. He's in Murfreesboro. He was a chopper pilot back in the early days of Vietnam, and I was telling Larry he's a potential candidate for MOAA. And so we found out about him and went to check to see what he needed, and we got a volunteer to give him a ride to Vanderbilt this morning, and so he's recovering. He had a really bad case of smoke inhalation, and from what he was telling us, his printer caught fire and almost burned the house down, but he managed to get out and save the house. So it's there's a lot of guys like that are pretty. They're doing okay. They're doing okay at some point, but then when they go down, they don't know where to turn. And I've had over half of the obstacles to people getting what they need from the VA is mental. There are lots of obstacles, but the mental issues, the pride. A lot of guys will say somebody needs it more than me, or there'll be some reason why they just don't want to go ask for help. And so we try to step in and kind of help when we can. And so we've got veterans of all ages. I've got one that we dealt with a few years ago that was from 9/11. He joined. He was 30 years old when 9/11 hit, and he did like a lot of people his age. He run down to the recruiter and he tried to join the Marines right away, and they have an age limit. They wouldn't let him in, so he joined the Army, and he ended up losing a leg in Afghanistan and came back, and we met him through a series of coincidences, and he was just starting to deal with the VA then and dealing with a lot of anger management. We were able to help him out with equipment, and after a couple of years, he finally got used to using the system. But in his case, like a lot of others, what we do is temporary. There's a lot of cases where they can get what they need if they have enough patience, or if they have an advocate that'll go in there and fight their battle and do the paperwork, and it takes some doing to want to cut through the red tape, and it never gets done in a hurry. And so we see a lot of people that need it. They need things today or this week, and a good example of a lot of the cases that we see is a veteran that's got equipment, it breaks down. We had one in Hermitage. He found us through people at the American Legion, and they got word to us his scooter was broke down, and so we loaned him a scooter. It was he got his scooter repaired by the VA 4 months later. And that's not, I don't know that that's typical, or it's just that those things happen. Sometimes it's a month, sometimes it's several months, and so we're able to, because we've been blessed with so much equipment and people give things to us freely, we can fill in the gaps, and that's really all we're trying to do is we're just trying to fill in the gaps, and there's a lot of gaps. Unfortunately, from what I gather with the connections I've got, that this is all over the country, and I had hoped many years ago to see something like this get started in other states, and it may be, we just haven't seen it. We see so much need here that it keeps us busy just filling the needs here. Any questions?
Why don't you talk about your interface with the VA on the homeless beds?
Okay. This past couple of years, I've had a lot of, many years ago, to start off, I networked with the Operation Stand Down in Nashville. And I'm sure everybody's a little bit familiar with Operation Stand Down. They've grown tremendously since they started, and they've actually opened offices in Clarksville and Columbia now. And Operation Stand Down has been blessed by people in Nashville with much better funding. They've created an offshoot called Creative Vets that provides free services to veterans in the way of music or arts, and they teach everything from sculpting and painting to music. And anyway, they've done a great job of getting veterans off the street and providing services to help them get off the street and get into housing. And so they've had my cards for several years, and now, and what happens, because they're focused on getting the veterans off the street, they don't have equipment, they don't have a place to store equipment, so they get a veteran that's having trouble getting around, he needs a scooter, they give us a call. And I've had more than a couple that came to us for help with a bicycle, because the VA has got a program where they subsidize the subsidized rent for veterans that they're getting off of the street. And they've got social workers that work with that program, not just Operation Stand Down, but the VA has social workers that are doing this. And so what they've done in the last couple of years, especially, they've come to us to help maybe pick up furniture and take it to their apartment, or give them a scooter if they need it. And so I've seen veterans in Nashville and Murfreesboro both, and Smyrna, that they've gotten off of the street, and in many cases they can get them into an apartment, get them off the street, but then now they've got an empty apartment with no furniture, and so they've managed to get some resources. We've had more than a couple of them that we had one here in Murfreesboro, right off of Martin Luther King Boulevard, that he was 73 years old. This was about 6 months ago, and he was 73, and he's an amputee. He's got one leg. He's in a wheelchair, and they just now got him off the street, and he was homeless. And he also was a stroke victim, so his speech was difficult, and he was barely able to get around. And somebody gave him a scooter when he got into his new home, but it was 3 steps up into the home, and so I got an anxious call from the homeowner. Hey, how about a ramp? So we were able to find we get ramps donated too, aluminum ramps, and so we were able to provide enough materials, and it took us a few days to get out there and put it up. We managed to put that up, and so now he can get in. Before that, and I've had more than a couple veterans in Murfreesboro that they were at the point where they needed a ramp and couldn't get out without an ambulance ride. And we had one off of Medical Center, off of Veterans Parkway, that we got a ramp built for, and he'd been stuck in his house for 2 years, except for ambulance rides. And his case, he was way overweight and couldn't get down the steps and get out of his house anymore. And we built a ramp for a double amputee in Gallatin. He couldn't get out of his apartment for 2 years, and he was too big for his. People around him wanted to help, but he was too big to carry, and so it was strictly ambulance rides to get to appointments, and that was it. So we see something like that, and those are, we do everything by priority, and those guys are generally priority. We try to get to them first, because we know it's kind of critical. I got a call from the Vietnam vets in Watertown. Had a Vietnam vet that was a chopper pilot about 2 months ago, and he went down and was using the VA, but at the same time he wasn't able to handle his affairs anymore, and his neighbor was taking care of his affairs, but she couldn't get him out of the house because there were so many steps, and so he had to use an ambulance to get out, just a regular appointment. And so we managed to fix him up with some equipment, and eventually, somebody like that, eventually maybe the VA will get to them, but it's usually by the time we see them, it's an urgent need, and the process to getting services is time consuming. And like in his case, in the World War II vet that we built the ramp for, they could no longer manage their own affairs, and so somebody else was having to, in his case it was a neighbor, and that person has to be the advocate and take over and handle their affairs, and it's a pretty hefty job, you know. And if you don't have a family member there to fight for you, it's kind of overwhelming.
Where are you located?
Smyrna. We've got all of our storage units that we've got is in Smyrna area, and but we meet at the Veterans Building over here, just like a lot of other groups do now. We're not necessarily based in Smyrna, we're just Rutherford County, but it just happens that we got a good deal on the storage units, and I live in Smyrna, so it became convenient to just use everything there.
So I tell everybody the name of the your organization.
Oh, Vietnam Veterans.
Well, but is that?
Of my organization?
Yeah, the one that you're doing all the help with.
Yeah, it's the Vietnam Veterans of Rutherford County. We're working on, we've been using an umbrella 501c that they initiated by the state, or the state VVA did, and Larry's working on getting us into having our own 501c so that we can better handle, so that if anything happens to the VVA, it seems that everybody's getting older, and Vietnam veterans, eventually they're not going to be able to stay afloat as an organization. So we're working on having our own 501c so that we can continue our mission.
Yeah, just to elaborate on that, the Vietnam Veterans of America, Chapter 1089 is a 19, and we've formed a 3C because there's a lot of grants and organizations that won't donate money to the 19, but they will to a 3C. And so we've established the Rutherford County Vietnam Veterans Foundation. We did that about 2 weeks ago, and we're getting that spun up to get more, so we can get more resources.